This back over here. Get off of this. Okay. Everything looking good?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was so nervous my laptop was going to die.
You're talking, I thought, right? Let me see. Stop my share. Escape out of here.
Test, test. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Karen?
I can hear you. Test, test, test.
Okay. Okay.
Test, test, test.
Did I not? I thought I... That again. Allow panelists to talk. Do I have to do that again? No. Disable talking. It's there.
Weird.
Where's my... Oh. My speaker turns off when there's no sound coming out of it after a while. So say something just so I know.
Test, test.
Okay. There we go. Too much new things. Too many new things. Okay. Okay. So now let me say it again. Everything look good?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. All right. So we just finished up risk, and now we're going to come in and we're going to do procurement. And so I mentioned earlier that quality, risk, and procurement were the three knowledge areas that people tend to struggle on because they're, they're more industry specific, especially quality, and then now procurement. It's a big one. So dial into this one. This, like quality management plan, the procurement management plan, the process to create one is pretty thorough. Where if you've noticed all the other plans like plan, scope management, time, cost, resources, communication, even risk, and then we'll see the stakeholder engagement plan after this process. They were all very like small, straightforward, very simple plans. But the quality management plan had a lot to it because we have to take into account the cost of quality, develop metrics. And now same thing here. The procurement management plan will have a lot because we have to think about a procurement strategy. We're going to get bid documents that we may send out. We're going to get make or buy decisions. And then here's where you'll also see the make or buy analysis as a tool and a technique. We're going to develop statements of works if we're going to have other companies come and assist us. And then we need to develop source selection criteria that determines, how we choose a particular vendor. So it goes deeper than just a high level plan, as I mentioned, and you kind of see there on the slides. Let me get up to that point. Right. It goes a little bit deeper than just a plan, versus like some of these other ones. And by the way, decisions made here directly affect the type of stuff that you need to buy for your project. So here's plan procurement management. So strategic decisions often necessitate purchasing products or service from outside. This is true. And plan procurement guides these decisions in how and when to acquire. That's really what the aspect of this process is. It's guiding, right? It's outlining our approach, is determining how we're going to proceed when it's time to acquire resources. So we're going to document the procurement decisions. We're going to define the approach, and we're going to identify potential sellers. We do that all now in planning, meaning we actually send RFPs out during planning. You would think that's an executing activity, but no, we send it out now. We want, if we need work to be done on the project, we need those folks to know now. So that way we're not, when the need comes, it'll take too long if we wait. All right, so we do all that now. And procurement presents opportunities for significant financial and liability risk. That is true, right? If you're not building everything in-house, in the second that you implement someone else's tool and system, regardless of whatever warranty they have with you, whatever SLAs they have, you are still liable with your client or with any other industry regulations. And so as a company that's providing something like that, well, when you second you go out and you start buying third-party stuff, it just increases your risk financially and from a standpoint of being sued. So contracts describe the legal relationships and obligations between buyers and sellers. The PMP test does assume the project team is the buyer of services from a seller. Okay, that's what they assume. Now, however, you will have questions where they place you in the position of the seller. So in your organization, the projects that you do, you're in the position of the seller. Okay. The majority of the questions on the exam will come from you being in the position of the buyer, meaning you're, either you're the company that's buying the implementation, or you're the company that in your implementation efforts, you are hiring, third-party consultants and third-party labor, et cetera, et cetera. So we get a lot of outputs in this process. We get the plan itself. We get the strategy for how we're going to actually purchase stuff. And you would think that would be in the plan, but it's actually a separate document. We get the bid documents. These are the RFPs, RFQs, RFIs. You get the procurement statement of work. We get, who's even eligible to sell to us. We're not buying from everyone. We determine after, and you'll see in data analysis, make or buy analysis, we get the decisions of what we should do in-house versus what we should outsource. We also need independent cost estimates to make sure that the people who are selling us aren't, pulling wool over our eyes. And then you could potentially get requests for change, updates to our document, updates to our approach. These last three are potential, right? So a lot of individual outputs in this process. Not many tools and techniques. Let's go gather the data. Let's go analyze the data. Let's analyze how we're selecting people, and let's meet together to use our expert judgment so that we can develop a plan and a strategy and document statement of work, so on and so forth. So the procurement management plan documents the requirements and constraints related to the project, to the procurement, what you're going to buy, and the specific activities that will be undertaken. So it defines how procurements will be completed. And by a procurement being completed means that we will buy from this company, they will implement, they will test, we will come back and test, we will then pay them, right? It defines all the way like how it'll be done so that that person can be paid and then integrated with other project work. All right. So specs that impact the procurement are types of contracts. We're going to talk about those. The funding sources. Are we borrowing the money? If we are we using a credit card? Is it a loan? The roles and responsibilities. Who's can actually sign these agreements? If it's vehicles, are we going to purchase them? Are we going to rent them? Are we going to lease them? All of this comes up. The timing, the procurement metrics, the constraints and assumptions, and who's a preferred seller. Who's on the company's list of folks that we're approved to buy from. What would that be called on the exam, by the way? What category would that fall in there?
Sorry, what was the question?
If I have a list of pre-qualified sellers that, the company says we're approved to buy from these people, you don't need to come from us and get, any permission. They're already on an approved list. What would that be called?
Resource.
It's somewhere in the inputs. And it's in bold.
Oh, it's in here.
It's somewhere in this column and it's a bold one.
Okay. OPAs?
Yes. So an exam asks you that, where would you go to find, qualified sellers or approved sellers or anything? That's an asset of the company. That belongs to the company, and they'll tell you who they've, who satisfied requirements to be considered a preferred vendor. So that's an OPA. Okay. I just want to mention that now because PMI will try to trip you up. Know that, nope, that's something that belongs to the company. They know who the approved sellers are. even if you know yourself, you still go back because sometimes the list changes and you're not involved in that list being changed. So, but for the exam too, they really like to try to make you think that it comes from the procurement management plan. No, qualified sellers come from an OPA. It's part of the organization.
Interesting.
And if you think about it, right, at your company, can you just buy something from anyone?
No, they give you a list, I guess. Yeah.
So it's an OPA.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so procurement strategy, right? The make or buy decisions defines the work or services that must be purchased. So in a make or buy decision, this is an output. Part of that is the procurement strategy. Will we buy the whole thing, or will we buy just a component and we'll build the rest? Or will we build a component and buy the rest, right? So we got to think about that. The delivery methods differ from professional versus construction projects. If you think about that, right? Professionals, they don't usually subcontract. So think about what you guys do. And I don't know your full business line, but I'm going to assume that you guys don't subcontract out anyone to help with implementations. You know, I'm going to assume that you guys don't have joint ventures with other companies to do that. You know, whereas construction, they'll do that. They'll subcontract out the work, right? You hire me as a GC. I'm really not doing your work. I'm really just as a general contractor, I'm really just the project manager. All right. And I'm going to go out and hire all the trades, electricians, the plumbers, the people who do the finishing work, all of that, foundations, engineering. So that's the difference between the two. So delivery methods comes into play, the contract types that we're going to see in a second, and the procurement phases, meaning if you have a multi-phase project or if you have a single phase project with a multi-phase procurement approach, right? There is that as well. So let's jump in. Remember that legal and procurement expertise is often leveraged to help develop and record the procurement strategy. So again, where we saw in risk owners where the project manager was not responsible for implementing a risk response, but the risk owner is, here, project manager is not responsible for executing contracts or making purchases, right? That would be either legal or the procurement department. Now, bid documents, another output that we're trying to get from this process. This is what we send to people. So I'm going to assume you're familiar with at least an RFP. Any of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So RFP is like the most detailed one. It's like a 30-page. Don't just give me a quote or a statement of work, but send me, resumes for the people who are coming to do the work, and also include a list of references that I can call, and also show me your past work examples and give me your development approach. Like, how are you actually going to do this, right? So request proposal, RFP, is usually very, very, very detailed. And then request for quote, very straightforward. The second one here is just tell me how much it will cost to do this, right? And then we have RFIs, request for information, right? And these are typically followed by an RFQ. Now, I want to mention that an RFQ in some industries is also known as a request for qualifications. So if that's how you know it, for PMI, that's an RFI. They're just requesting information. That's the same thing as a request for qualifications. And then if you come from that world, then the RFQ for you is the request for quote. All right, for some people, that's an IFB, or an invitation to bid, invitation for bid. So, just know RFI, RFQ, RFP for PMI. Those are the three that you gotta remember.
Okay.
Then the procurement statement of work. It needs to be, and make a note, needs to be in sufficient detail to allow the sellers to assess if they're capable of doing the work. Right? You can't just say, I'm building a new PMP training classroom and I want you to install a projector. You got to say something like, we have a drop ceiling and we don't know what's above it. And by the way, you can only use union labor. Right? You got to put enough detail so that they know if they can do the work. All right. So it comes with the specs, how much you need, the level of that. What's going on here? The level, where it's going to be, who's going to do it and who's going to get it. Who do we escalate to? All of this needs to be a part of your statement of work. It needs to be very, very, very detailed. Right now, source selection criteria. Think about this as how anytime you make a major purchase, this is what we do. We look at, like, okay, say we're going to buy a refrigerator or a washer and dryer or a car or something like that. Any major appliance, any major purchase. You think about what's this company's history? What proprietary, Maytag, super sensing, spinning, super duper something do they have? What kind of warranty do they have? How stable is this company? Do we think they'll be around for years to come? So, so it's the same thing in business. We think about the company's capability. What's their capacity? Do they have a lot of people? Can they ramp up work for us? Are we going to be their main client? Can we call them up and they're going to just jump for us? Or how much do they cost? What's their experience? Have they done this type of work before? Specifically ours? Will they be able to meet the schedule? You'll look at all of these different aspects. You'll place weight to them. You will order them for each applicant, and then you'll multiply them by the weight, and you'll figure out, who meets your criteria the best. All right. Sometimes you may have mandatory criteria selection pieces where if someone doesn't meet that, but they're great everywhere else, too bad, so long, we can't use you.
Mm-hmm.
Independent cost estimates are needed. So that way you can know that if your bid was, grossly over or under, right? If someone grossly underbids, then you get weary because you're like, well, are you guys going to do all the work? Am I going to be satisfied? Because you get what you pay for. So, you think about those things. And so independent cost estimates gives us a frame of reference for evaluating those things. You do it either internally or externally. Typically it's done externally. You just call someone up and you get a quote. So like you'd send out an RFP and you get these people back that send you very detailed proposals, how they're going to do it. And you're like, okay, that's good. I see what this price is. And then you'll just go to another company. Don't ask them for an RFP, but you'll just say, hey, can you give me a quote? How much would it take for you to do X, Y, and Z? And you might do that with 2 or 3 vendors to see, are the prices they're giving me the same as these people? Are these people just jacking up the price because they had to explain and it's going to be more of a detailed document? So I'll just accept it. So we kind of use independent cost estimates, to help make sure that we don't have ambiguous information, or, if folks fail to understand something, then we need to do that. Right. There's also we'll probably get to that in the tools and techniques. So what we need business documents to do this. So now we're on the inputs, right? And our strategy needs to align with the charter. So that way the money we're spending on these particular procurements matches up to satisfy some goal or some objective that should be achieved. All right. Our project plans will reference and define what needs to be purchased. And then we can use details in that statement of work that can come from, the scope baseline, right? We can take the scope statement, the WBS, the WS dictionary, and we can go back in and then take the schedule baseline, right? And we can use that to create requirements documentation, a traceability matrix, those types of things. We'll use those, not create them, but we'll use the information in those. That way we can create an accurate SOW. So we take those documents into account. We got to take OPAs. That approved seller list would be an OPA, right? You see that there. You might have formal policies for how you have to buy things, so that'll be there. And then the contract types. 3 types of contracts: fixed price, cost reimbursable, time and material. Let's look at each. Okay. So first of all, fixed price contracts, the risk sits with the buyer. The seller. Risk is on the seller in a fixed price contract. Okay. You need to know that risk is highest for the seller. All right. So in a firm fixed price contract, the reason why it's high is because I can say, all right, Karen, I will paint these 4 walls for you and I'll do it for $500. And when I'm done, you can come back and say, this is not sand, this is taupe. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what taupe is, but all I know is just the light color you want it. And we argue over it, but either way, I'm not getting paid until I give you what you want. So a fixed price contract, risky to me, the seller. There's the fixed price incentive fee, the FPIF. There's a contract called the point of total assumption. That's a type of contract type that you may be hit with on the exam. So it's a fixed price incentive fee. And these are the types of projects that say, okay, Karen, I will paint your room for $500. That's the fixed price, but you need this done in 3 days. And it typically takes 3 weeks to do this. So if I get it done in 3 days, you're going to pay me an extra 15%. If I get it done in 2 days, you're going to pay me an extra 20%. And if I get it done in a day, you'll pay me an extra 30%, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the incentive fee. All right. And then fixed price with economic price adjustment. While I have seen them on year-long contracts, they're usually for contracts that span 2 or more years. And it's the idea that nobody wants to pay the price of concrete today, what it's going to be in 3 years. That thing could go up, it could go down, both parties, because one side is like, oh no, I don't want to pay you the same amount because it could be cheaper. And the other part is like, nope, I don't want to sell you at the same amount because it could be more expensive. So we use fixed price with economic price adjustment. And what happens is it's tied to some index like the S&P index or the Fed rate or something like that. And then at some point that we've negotiated within the year, whenever it started, let's say July, we got like a fiscal on July 1, we're then going to use the S&P index to determine how much, the new items, new materials should cost, and then we'll readjust our contracts there. So that's the fixed price with economic price adjustment. All three of these contracts are riskiest to the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have cost reimbursable contracts. All the risk on these sits with the buyer. All right, risk sits with the buyer in these. Get my R in there. All right. And the different types of cost reimbursable contracts. So, excuse me, the first one, it is not in this because it is not in the PMBOK, but it's called CPPC, or cost plus percentage of cost. Cost plus percentage of cost. That's a CPPC contract. Now, it's a very viable contract. It's still used today. It's not in the PMBOK because it's not allowed on federal procurements, and PMI and the federal government kind of walk in the park hand in hand. So since it's not federal procurements, ain't going to be in our book. However, if you remember, the most important aspect I told you on our very first day, PMI reserves the right to test your materials not in the PMBOK. So you will see this on the exam because it is a very viable contract. So now cost plus percentage of cost. This is the idea that, all right, I'm going to, you hired me to do your landscaping. I charge you a price for my labor, and then I'm going to also charge you a percentage of all the materials that you buy. So my only incentive is to get you to spend more and more money, because at the end, whatever you spent, I get a percentage of that dollar. Every dollar you spent, I'm getting a percentage. So that's why it's not allowed in federal procurements, because it's like, oh, you just want to take us for our money. But there's many contracts out there that still use this, and so it's on the exam. Mm-hmm. Then we have a cost plus fixed fee, CPFF. These are probably the most standard type cost reimbursable contracts. So imagine you are having your kitchen remodeled and you pay a contractor to come and hang the cabinets. And he's like, okay, based on the amount of cabinets you want and where they're going to be in the style, it's going to cost you $2,000 for me to come in and level these and hang them and, connect them all nice together. However, the fixed fee is, I don't care if you buy our $2,000 cabinets, our $5,000 cabinets, or our $10,000 cabinets. That fee is fixed. You're just going to pay the cost of my labor. Cost of my labor plus a fixed fee. Does that make sense? So if you hired me to do landscaping, and you said I need you to plant 5 trees, the cost of me to plant the 5 trees is going to be the same, regardless if you bought a $10 tree or a $1,000 tree. Okay. Then we have cost plus award fee. Okay. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Cost plus incentive fee. Okay. Cost plus incentive fee is these contracts are very objective. There are, key performance indicators that will be written within the contract that let me know what I will, if I'll be able to achieve that incentive. These are typically used on Department of Transportation projects. So I can give you 2 examples in the last 20, 30 years that you may remember. I'll go back many, many, many years ago. Remember the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that movie was based off the 94 earthquake in Irvine in Southern California. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that?
I did not.
A lot of people don't know that. So that movie is really, it's based off the actual earthquake that happened in 94. Okay, so I remember when that earthquake happened, I where I lived in the city of Ontario, it was maybe 40 miles east of Irvine, maybe only 30 miles east of Irvine. And, you know, we definitely felt it, but it wasn't the epicenter. It was far enough away, not a big deal. However, all the freeways and the roads were broke. I mean, they were bad. You couldn't drive into the city. So the state, because the state needs to collect money from, you know, local taxes too, local municipalities got to pay all these things. So if the roads aren't there, then there's no commerce happening, right? People can't get into the city. They can't get into the city. There's no commerce. There's no commerce happening. There's no taxes. So they paid a contractor a contract that was a cost plus, meaning we as a state will pay for as much concrete, you know, rebar, asphalt, all of that stuff. We're going to pay for it. And then so that's coming out of our pocket. And then the incentive is for how quickly you get it done. And the state of California did a contract where they paid the vendor $1 million a day for every day that they got done. So that vendor was like, oh, that's the contract we have? Okay, I will set up 3 8-hour shifts rolling, and we're going to work around the clock. And they finished almost 31 days ahead of schedule. And that contract cost the state an additional $31 million. And so they said, we'll never do it again. But we did. Do you remember when Governor Schwarzenegger was our governor? Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember, it's probably 10, maybe even, it's a little bit longer, 10, 15 years ago, a truck crashed going over the maze, all the little freeway pieces that get you from the bay into the city. So before before you even get to the fast track spot, right before that, that's where like 580, 80, 880 all sort of like meet and come in, and there's, you know, freeways going all underneath, and a truck crashed. It caught on fire, and the fire was so hot it burned an 18-foot section above it, and it fell. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
When that happened, we turned around and did the same thing, because again, you know, if people can't get on that off ramp or whatever that's called, that little circular piece, in order to get to other aspects, well, that just caused so much traffic. So again, they did one of those cost plus incentive fee contracts where they worked and worked and worked, and they ended up making a whole bunch of extra money. It cost us and the state a lot of money, which means me and you, because ultimately we paid for that in taxes. And so we said we'll never do it again. So we'll see when the next thing happens if we'll never do it again. All right, but those are cost plus incentive fees. Very, very standard for Department of Transportation contracts. And then cost plus award fee, that's more subjective. Okay, these aren't contracts, but think of it like this. A cost plus incentive fee is when you go to a restaurant and they say, okay, parties of 6 or more get an automatic 18% gratuity. So you're going to pay for the cost of the meal, and then you're going to pay 18% because that's what the incentive fee was. Okay. Now, cost plus award fee is more like when you go to a restaurant and you pay for the cost of your meal, and then you award that waiter or waitress a fee based on how you feel about their service. Right. So it's tied to more subjective performance criteria. And I know those 2 examples I gave you are not contracts, but they highlight sort of the idea of something being very objective, the incentive fee, versus something being very subjective, the award fee. I think she did okay. I'll pay her that. Right. All right. So most of the risk is with the buyer, and we see that down there at the bottom. And then we have time and material contracts, AKA hourly contracts. Yeah, they're hybrids of cost reimbursable and fixed price, because, you know, you take into account and you just make into an hourly rate. So usually when you can't figure out exactly what needs to be done and work needs to be uncovered, but I need to pay somebody to uncover that work, then we'll go for an hourly rate. So staff aug, we need somebody to just come in and be a body. All right, we don't know how long we're going to need you, so we're just going to pay you by the hour. Or if you need, you know, expert advice for a certain amount of time, you talk to a lawyer or something like that, you know, every 6 minutes, it's $10, something like that. All right. So that's the idea of time and material contracts. The risk here still sits with the buyer. The risk is with the buyer for both cost reimbursable and time and material contracts. Because even if I put a not to exceed clause, I can say, I'm going to pay you, Karin, $500, not, I'm going to pay you $500 not to exceed $600 to paint this room at $10 an hour. And then you burn all 60 hours and you paint 1 wall, 2 wall, 3 walls. You can't see this when you paint the 4th wall, but you don't paint that little section back there, that 5th wall. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm out. Even though I spent $600, even though I had the not to exceed, my scope is not completed and my budget has been used. So risk is still with the buyer for these. All right, and other tools and techniques in procurement, you just use your expert judgment, meaning you go and you find those folks within the organization who are the experts and you have them or ask them to help you gather and analyze this information. That way you can figure out, should I make it or should I buy it? Who should I source from? So that's what we see there. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Case study.
Okay. Mm. tea. Thanks. Okay. Okay, I'll stick with D. A.
I was on mute the whole time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought you were just being
Oh
really
man. All
quiet.
right. But you know, it's funny. As we figured it out though, we we worked through it. All right, let's see. DNA, good. Time materials. So it was time materials. He put a cap. That's really just you know, I explained that earlier, a not to exceed clause. All right. So that's what they did. They were like, well, we know this is risky. These guys are just going to come in and work and work and work. So, you know, if we don't get what we want, then we can't just keep spending money. So we'll put a cap on it. All right. So that's
Okay.
that's what that was. And then, yep, source selection criteria.
Okay, I think I'm a little bit confused with the difference between cost plus fixed fee and um, fixed price. Or I'm confused with the one that's like, I think the example was getting some landscaping done, and then it's like their time plus the materials.
Okay. That's the cost plus fixed fee.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the cost plus, let me explain it this way. Let's go this way. So the first, we have fixed price. If we look at the bottom here, we have fixed price, cost reimbursable, time materials. Okay. So we know these are hourly. Okay. Cost reimbursable means that typically you will pay for the cost of the materials. So some vendor's going to come in. You need someone to paint. They're going to come in and paint your house. You're going to pay them for the cost of the paint. You don't know how much paint it is, but they're like, we don't know. It could be 5 to 10 gallons, but you know, we'll let you know when we're done. However much we use, that's what we'll charge you for. And you'll agree upon however much a gallon. So you're going to pay the cost for that. And then the fee that you're going to pay for is going to be for their labor. So for the fixed fee, they'll say, okay, I'll paint your house for $500. And then you just, however much paint we use, you will reimburse for those costs. So cost plus a fixed fee. The incentive fee says, I'll paint your house, but if I get it done in a week, it's 500. If I get it done in a week and a half, it's 400. If I get it done in half a week, it's 600. Right. So the incentive is for me to work faster. I can do a cost plus a award fee, which is more subjective, where it's like, okay, Karin, I'm gonna paint your house. You'll pay for the cost of the paint. We agreed upon a gallon price, and I don't know how much it's going to take, but however much we use, you'll pay for that. And then when I'm done, if you really like the job, you know, you just pay me what you think. You award me some fee. You'll be like, you know, CJ, you did a great job. Here's $1,000. Or, you know, you did the job just as asked. Here's 500. Or, you know what? Your job sucked. I'm not paying you a dime. All right. So then there's the cost plus percentage fee, which says, okay, I'll paint your house. And depending on however much paint it takes, that's how much we'll charge you. So for every, you know, gallon of paint is $15, and then we're going to charge you 50% of the cost. So for every gallon of paint that we paint for you, it's going to cost you $7.50, right? So the total cost will be $23.50, 15 for the paint, 7.5 for our labor, or 22.5.
Okay.
So those are the cost reimbursables. Then the fixed price, there's just a firm fixed price, right? So let me first go boom here, and we talked about these, right? So cost plus fixed fee, all right? Paint your house for $500, or if I get it done in 2 weeks, a week, or half a week, you know, takes me from 400 to 500 to 600, or you'll award me based on how you think I did, or I'll just charge you some percentage of what the materials are, right?
Mhm.
Then we have fixed price contracts, which say, all right, the materials and the labor are all rolled up into one, and I'll charge you $650 to paint your house, right? You don't worry about, I'll bring the paint. However much paint it takes is what it takes. Like, I'm paying for that paint. I'm building those costs in, and here's your one price. Okay. The fixed price incentive fee says, okay, same thing. It's a fixed price. You're not paying for any materials. You're not paying for any labor, anything like that. It's just a fixed price, $500. However, if I get it done, 10% faster, then you'll give me a 10% fee. If I get it done 10% lower, then you'll subtract 10%. All right. So that's the incentive fee to make sure that I adhere to a schedule. And then the economic price adjustment is just saying that, okay, my labor and the materials, while it's a fixed price for this year, next year on October 24th, whatever today is, 23rd, 24th, we are going to look at the cost of all of these materials and adjust it. Whatever the average labor rate for my type of service, whether it went up or down, we're going to adjust it. However much it costs for paint and primer, if it went up or down, we're going to adjust it.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now I have a question. Which one is riskiest to the seller? Which contract type?
Fixed price?
Fixed price, good. Which one is riskiest to the buyer?
Cost reimbursable and time and material.
Beautiful. Okay. Okay. So we did the case study. We did that. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the last planning process, stakeholder management. So I want you to notice something interesting, that for all of these, we come up with a plan, and then we use the plan for how we collect, define, and create scope. We come up with a plan, and then we use the plan for how we define, sequence, estimate, and develop a schedule, so on and so forth. For planned stakeholder engagement, what's interesting is that in the initiating process group, where we developed the charter, then identified stakeholders, we actually identify the stakeholders first, then we make a plan to engage them. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I cannot come up with a stakeholder engagement plan until I've identified the stakeholders with whom I need to engage with. All right. So this is the only planning process that happens after the initial work is done. Does that make sense?
The only planning process that happens after the initial work is done. Of identifying the stakeholders?
Yeah, because we identified stakeholders first, and we have to. If we don't know which stakeholders we're dealing with, there's no way for us to plan how to engage them. But everything else, we need a plan first. You need a plan how to collect your requirements, define your scope, and create your work breakdown structure so you can do it. You need a plan how you're going to estimate your costs and develop your budget so that way you can go and do it. You need to plan how you're going to identify, qualify, quantify, and come up with the risk responses so that you can go do it. But here, in order for us to plan the stakeholders, we must first identify them. And it's not on the slide, but if you remember the first two processes, right? You have develop charter up at the top, and then you have identify stakeholders down at the bottom, right? Well, you got to identify these stakeholders first. This needs to happen first. That way you can make a plan second. So this is the only one that kind of follows that route.
I see.
All right. So now what we want to do, we want to come up with our approaches to involve the stakeholders based on each stakeholder's unique needs, right? So it's all about engagement. Also notice how scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, quality management plan, resource management plan, communication, risk, procurement management plan. However, we don't come up with a stakeholder management plan. We come up with a stakeholder engagement plan. This whole process is about engaging stakeholders, keeping them participating on the project. They're aware and abreast of what's happening. There's no secrets. They're showing up to project performance reviews, to change control board meetings. They're doing all of those things. And that is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure that they do those, that they're involved. Because if not, what happens is you get a stakeholder who doesn't say anything for months and months and months. Those are the ones that I'm so afraid of, because you're going to pop up and you're going to be upset about something that we've done for the last 6 months simply because you didn't get to voice your opinion. When you have big projects, it's a big goal to make sure that everybody's engaged and that you hear them out at the right time. Because if you have people who are disengaged, you miss out on their knowledge when you're planning, you miss out on their knowledge when they're executing, you miss out on their knowledge when you're monitoring and controlling. So you want to make sure you get that knowledge up front, and then you engage them so that they stay engaged throughout the life cycle of the project. So here we go, stakeholder engagement. So this is all about you developing a customized approach. There goes that word again. Your guide, how you're going to proceed, your approach. So we're going to customize our approach to engage each stakeholder. And a stakeholder can be a group, by the way, right? I don't know, just came to mind, the church can be a stakeholder, but we know that's a lot of people, right? The police department, the fire department, right? So groups can be stakeholders as well. Okay, we want to think about the detailed information we have on those people, and we want to think about where's their engagement level versus their desired engagement level. Because, by the way, you got some people who are over-engaged. They want to know any and everything about your project. They got so much questions. They know more about your project than some of your team members. And it's like, back up. You're not even part of the project. You're wasting my time. Did you read the report? We have a pull methodology for you to go get it from SharePoint or the intranet site or something like that. So sometimes you have to under-engage people, and then sometimes people are under-engaged and you got to bring their engagement level up. So it's both here, all right? And we also use them in other processes when we manage the engagement and execution, and when we monitor it and monitor and control, that comes into play. But this engagement plan, if you remember, is also used when we create our communication plan. Because we got to think about how do we best engage these people so that they stay connected with the project? Then we got to think about it. What does that look like? Do I text this person, email that person, phone call this person, video chat this person? But that person, I got to tweet you, or I got to DM you on Instagram, or, I got to Facebook message you, because that's how the only way you'll respond, right? So we got to think about those things. And then that actually plays into your communication management plan as well. Mm-hmm. And here it goes down there. So we're trying to get the plan. We are going to gather data from these sources. We are going to analyze those data within meetings. We are going to represent the data and use that to drive some decision-making about which stakeholders are deemed to be the most important, right? Because we do not have time to meet with all of the stakeholders, right? If you remember our grid, right? And then we chart power over interest. All right, we only really have time to for sure deal with these people because we have to manage them closely. These folks, we got to keep them satisfied. These folks, we got to keep them informed. And these folks, we put them on the watch list, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have time to deal with everybody. So we think about that, and we'll use these tools and techniques in order to understand how we really need to do everything we can so that we satisfy and inform and manage all of these people super duper 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 closely. Mm-hmm. So here's your management plan. Excuse me, your engagement plan. Your engagement plan. Let me make a note here. This is slide 444. Should be engagement at the top. Not management plan. Okay. My team does not like me sometimes because I see every little thing and then they just but anyway, I mean, it should, right? You can't have engagement right here and then have management there. I mean, what the heck? All right. Anyways. All right. So the stakeholder management plan was that okay. Documents the specific actions and strategies, right? So this is now in our stakeholder register. We had strategies for what to do when something happens, meaning the stakeholder register would have the stakeholder level of power, authority, interest, influence, etc. And then we would say, okay, what are the major things that could happen on the project? We could deliver late, we could go over money, we could get the scope wrong. And then there's an infinite variation of each of those three, right? And so let's say of those infinite variations in each of the 3 categories, we pick the top 3. So therefore we have 9 individual scenarios that we got to watch out for. And then we'll say, this stakeholder is likely to respond in this manner if this happens. So we will do X in order to combat that, right? All that's there as part of the strategy for those stakeholders and how to deal with them depending on their reaction, which is very, very different from now coming up with a plan to make sure that they're coming to the change control meetings, or they're showing up and they're reading the project status reports and things like that. So, very, very different in this case is that we're trying to make sure that, we have a way to keep them connected and they know what's going on. So we take the stakeholder register as an input, key input, right? We need the plans, the charter as high level information, any agreements. Anytime you sign a contract with somebody on the exam, those 2 parties or that party now becomes a key stakeholder to your work, because if they don't do their work properly, your project won't get completed properly, right? So now that they have signed something, they are a key stakeholder, and you definitely got to manage them closely. All right. We'll also take the charter, plans, documents, right? We'll take all the stuff into account. We'll analyze that data. We'll look at the constraints of communicating with these folks, meaning, all right, these is an outside vendor, so they're not available, only available between 8 and 5 or 10 to 7 or something like that. So we think about the constraints and the assumptions that we have. Okay, well, we have an account manager, so she or he will be able to tear everything for us, right? We'll note those assumptions and those constraints, and then we'll look at root cause analysis, right? Because sometimes where you feel pain is not the cause of it, right? Just because I might have a headache, but maybe the headache is being caused by something in my neck or something that I ate, right? So now we got to go do root cause analysis. Have you done that before?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We usually do something like this. We'll do whoops. We'll do something like this. And let's see if you can tell what I'm drawing here. What does that look like?
Fish.
A fish. Have you seen one of these before? A fishbone diagram?
So. No, I haven't actually.
Okay. So this is called a fishbone diagram, or a cause and effect diagram, or an Ishikawa. That's how it's usually known in the industry, an Ishikawa, or an Ishikawa fishbone diagram. PMI will use all 4 terms. They'll call it a cause and effect diagram. They'll call it a fishbone diagram, an Ishikawa diagram, and then in question 200 or 199, they'll call it an Ishikawa fishbone diagram, right? So those are your 4 terms for this. And ultimately, it's to trace some issue or problem that we have. So whatever this issue is we'd write it here. And then we want to trace it back to the source. Oops, I know if I did that, I can't touch over that, my little arrow. So the source, this is the ugly version of source in green. And so what we do is we'll have, we'll use prompts again. You remember TCOP, pestle. All right, there's the pestles, another prompt. What are all the political, environmental, what are all the things that could happen? We'll use these prompts, and we'll have some issue like my car won't start. That's the issue. And so then each of these will be categories, right? Is it be category like this? I can't really erase versus just go back. Maybe I'll do that easier. Boom, 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 boom. Get this Ishikawa. You know what? The quickest way is to just delete this and then come back. Okay. So what will happen is you'll have this fish head like this back here, and you have the tail, right? And then each of these here become categories. So you'll have a category of like people, And this could be like the environment, right? And you'll say, what are all the people reasons why this car won't start? Okay. And you'll say, okay, maybe it's inexperience. Maybe this is a stick and this person doesn't know they got to engage the clutch to start the vehicle, right? Maybe it's a push to start, and this person is looking for a place to put a key in, but they don't know that it's push to start, right? Or what are all the environmental reasons? And then again, we can put a bunch of these here. Maybe the altitude's too high. Maybe it's too cold, so the battery's not working, right? Or it could be the systems. Maybe there's something wrong with the battery, or something wrong with the starter, so on and so forth. So that's how you use a fishbone diagram. You'll have your issue in the front, right? And then you'll trace it back to find whatever your root cause. And in order to find the root cause, you'll put all of your different categories. And then from your different categories, you'll go on and you'll try to find all the reasons that something could happen in this category, and all the reasons something could happen in this category. And then, most of the time before you finish it, you usually find out, oh, yep, it's this one here. And then you'll complete the rest of the exercise just for the sake of completing it. But the majority of the time, you'll find the root cause like in the middle of your studies, if you will, of your investigation. All right, so that is an Ishikawa fishbone diagram, or a root cause diagram, or a cause and effect diagram. Now you can go back and wow your team members. Next time you guys have a problem, with some implementation or something, you can say, you know what, we're going to use a root cause diagram because Ishikawa might, but you can call it Ishikawa because that's like a conversation piece. Ishikawa, what is that? Oh, you don't know Ishikawa? Oh man, the Japanese high quality Toyota. This came from Japan. Let me show you what it is. And you start drawing. It's like, this is like a fish. Okay, well, here's our issue. We're trying to get to the root cause. Here's our categories, and then let them fill in the rest. All right. You just need to set up the infrastructure, if you will, the skeleton of that fish. Let them fill in the meat. And then at the end, you'll pick what that cause is. You'll pick the type of fish, if you will, so to speak. Okay. We can then represent that data. I've shown you mind maps. Do you remember mind mapping?
Yep.
And then here's a stakeholder engagement matrix. This, I believe, you can find, I don't have my PMBOK with me, but page 444, I believe, is the stakeholder engagement metrics. And if you're not, if you don't have a stakeholder register on your project now, this is a good tool to use to go ahead and figure out where your stakeholders stand versus where you want them to be. All right, let's see. Where is that engagement assessment matrix? It's 444 in version 5. In version 6, that is going to be on 522. All right, remember that page, CJ, 522. Okay. So it's a really good tool. You can just come in and you can start putting your stakeholders, because let's talk about these levels so that because PMI is going to describe them and ask them about them. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Some of them are rhetorical, but nonetheless. How often have you worked on a project where you got somebody that has no idea about this project, but it affects them the most? You ever worked on a project like that? Or maybe
Not very often.
Not very often? Yeah, so if you're doing implementations, the only way I could see it is like there's some stakeholder on the client side that's like, oh, we're getting this tool? Like they didn't even know. And it's like, well, you're a key stakeholder. You're going to be an end user and you even know. All right, so this is unaware people. Then you got the people that this tool is going to help them. This is likely on the client side now. And from your experience and the type of work you do, this is likely happening on the client side, whether it gets to you or not. You got some people that are like, oh my gosh, this is the third financial tool that we've gotten in the last 5 years. Can we just pick something and stay with it? They're resistant to this new tool. However, the tool is going to help them, right? So you have those stakeholders like that too. They're resistant to this thing that's going to happen. Now, I'm sure you've worked with people that are like, look, I could care less if this project is successful. If it's a failure, I'm going to show up every day at 8. I'm going to punch out at 5. You're going to get great work from me. But don't call me at 5:01 because I'm punched out. And don't think I'm going to show up at 7:59. I will not. I will be here at 8. I will leave at 5. I will do my job. Don't ask me about my personal life. Don't ask me to eat lunch with me. We're not taking any breaks together. I show up for work and I leave. Now you're at a startup, so you have there's probably a small number of people, and more than likely because there's a small number of people, there's more of an engagement level. But I have to assume that at some point in your life, whether at Facebook or somewhere else, you've worked with people like that.
For sure.
Then you have the supportive people. Oh, the project is great. This is awesome. Oh my gosh. Tell me what you need from me. And then when you ask for help, they're gone, right? They'll support your cause, but they ain't really going to help you with nothing. All right. Those supportive people. And then you got the leading people that they will tell everybody about the project and why it's good and why they should be on board. And these are the people you want to arm with as much information as possible, because they are what I call the project champions. They'll go and they'll round up the troops for you. They'll tell everybody why and why not. They're kind of like the lobbyists. I use these people as lobbyists for my projects. I identify them as the leaders, and I'm like, oh, you are the lobbyist. So anytime I have some information, or I need something, or I need to influence some people, I think about those people, who's going to be able to be the best, and then I give them the information. It's kind of like they're a source, right? It's like being in a newspaper. Here's my source. Yep. Here's my source. I'm going to go give this information to this person, because I know that tomorrow when I come back, everybody in the organization is going to hear about it, right? So you have the leakers. You have the people who are going to just run their mouth. You have the people that are going to go talk to the higher ups. You got the people who are going to galvanize some of the, really smart, or the people that have been there for a long time that have a lot of tribal knowledge. Identify those 3 types and keep a little list in your back pocket. So that way, when it's time to do stuff on the project, you can enlist those people to do it for you. Right. And it just makes your life so much easier. So just another little tip. Okay, let's next case study. Where'd she park?
All right.
All right, so which document created by the identify stakeholder processes is a key input to the plan stakeholder management process, helping to provide detailed information on each stakeholder.
C.
Okay. Which data representation, oops, what happened there? Which data representation tool did the team use to evaluate the current versus desired engagement levels for each stakeholder?
D.
Okay. Pretty good, pretty good. Okay. So we have just concluded what is day 2, right? So this would, if you were taking this class Monday through Thursday, at the end of day 2, this is where we would be, which is interesting. We have, 5 hours yesterday, no, 10, 16 hours. So we are, and we're on till 3 or 2:30, till 3, right? So we're an hour and 10 minutes ahead of schedule, which is
Nice.
okay. What's that?
I said nice.
And the reason why is also is because although my classes run from 8:30 to 6, I have days where we're done at 4 because everybody in the class, they just knew what was going on. They came from a company where they used PMI terminology, and so they didn't have a whole lot of questions. And I've had some classes where we're there till 6:30 because there's a ton of questions. Now that it's just me and you, there's not that many questions. So where there are questions, but it's only you. So that explains our being up. So what would you like to do? Would you like to take the rest of the time to review? If you have any questions that you want to ask, do you want to take the time to, like special topics or just, sort of like anything? Do you want to sort of just go off on your own, or do you want to just blow through and keep going?
We have how much time left?
We have an hour
An hour or
and
so.
10 minutes. So like
Okay.
in this, on day 3, when we start on day 3 in an hour. So if I do a recap, we just start class from 8:30, half hour, start at 9. And by the time, and let's see, from 9 to 10:30, which is usually when our first break would be, I would be done with likely either manage quality or manage the team. I either would have gotten to this process, or if once I start acquire the team, I do all 3. So I usually ask the class all right, if we're going to start acquire team, then I want to do acquire team, develop team, manage team all at the same time. So we can either likely in an hour and 10 minutes for us, we likely can get all the way to manage team. So, I mean, that just giving you that. So but again, and if we did it on Tuesday night, this is likely where we would get to as well. We would, half a day. So we would finish executing. And then, so on the 3rd day, by the way, in a day, we do executing, monitoring, controlling. All right. So that's in the next 8 hours. So we have 3 hours Tuesday, 3 hours Thursday, and then likely a couple hours on Sunday. We would finish, and then you would, on Saturday of next week, and then you would have the option to either just, for the next 4 out of our 5 hours, take your exam, and then when we show up on Wednesday, on Sunday, then we cover it. Or you could just take your exam later that night or the next morning. But either way, 4 hours is built in for you to take the exam. It might only take you 2.5 to 3 on average is what it takes people. And then we spend, the next 4 to 5 hours covering your application, any special topics, and then setting you up with a roadmap to make sure that as your studies for the next 2 weeks, you have a plan. And, and if you need any check-ins, we'll come up with a schedule for checking in with me.
Okay, I think for the rest of today, I can just let everything sink, and we can have a little bit of our weekends back.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Okay. And then And then I can review the information. And if I feel like we need to go back to anything, then I'll bring it up on Tuesday. But I think we're at a good stopping point for today.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind going into any more, but the teacher side of me says that I understand that at some point, one new thing in and then one old thing out. So you're right, it needs to let it sit, but I always want it to be your decision.
Okay.
So, although we're signing off now, just note that I'm available the rest of the day. So like if you're gonna like spend an hour, let's just make an assumption. We're gonna get
Okay.
off this call and you're like, you know what? I committed to 3. So I'm just gonna sit down for the next hour and review, right? And as you review, if a question comes up, shoot me a text. All right.
Okay.
If and then if you're like, okay, I'm gonna go play with my daughter or talk to my mom for the rest of the day, spend time with my husband, and then you might come back to it tonight randomly and you have a question, shoot me a text. If it comes up on Monday, shoot me a text. Okay. So just contact me, whatever comes up in your head. If I can respond right away, I will. If not, I'll shoot you an email or we'll talk about it on Tuesday. But whatever's in your head that you're thinking at that moment, I really want you to document it and let me know. So that way we can address it because you might not remember all of it on Tuesday. So.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. I appreciate that.
Write a paragraph for me. 1.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's what you do for the next, it shouldn't take you an
Okay.
hour, but write a paragraph.
Okay. I did have a question about the application part of that.
Okay.
So let's say I did a project for a client and it was years ago and I don't remember the exact timing. Like, how can I, like, what's the best practice for getting that information? Like, do I need to reach out to my old boss to see if they have like my old implementation plans or something like that? Because it's all like OPAs, fair OPAs. And I'm at a new company, so I don't think you'd
Sure.
necessarily be open to giving me that information.
Well, they usually are. And I mean, like now, Karin, I'm just going to say again, from the 15 hours that we've been on here, you don't strike me as the type of person that like, when you leave a company, I'm like, I don't ever want to talk to that girl again. You don't strike me as that. So I haven't heard too many issues of people not being able to get information, but let me ease this for you anyways. It does not need to be a boss. It can be a coworker. It can be someone in HR who knows. They might not have any idea about the project or you, but they know that you were the PM and that, yes, you did manage this project. It could be the vendor. Okay. So it does not need to be your supervisor. It just needs to be somebody who can vouch for you. So right now, what I would do is either email or phone call or use LinkedIn and find, in your mind, make a list of 5 people that you can find. And then, go talk to all 5 of them. And then when you're done, find out, let's assume that all 5 are willing to vouch for you. Pick the one that you think would, be the most, reliable. And then that's the person that you want to mail them an envelope that's that they need to sign over the back, and then a second envelope that's self-addressed with a stamp back to you. So you're going to mail them an envelope with 2 envelopes in the form. They're going to sign the form, fold it in the envelope, sign the back flap, and mail it back to you. But that's only if you get audited, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. So that's the random audit. But for now, you do want to make sure that you find who's those person that you're going to designate, though, just in case you do get randomly audited. So that's all you really need to do now is find those people. And hopefully that makes it easier, right? It doesn't have to be a boss, but it can be, because because PMI knows we move on and we go to different places, and even your boss might have moved on. So it's like, it's impossible to constrain people in that manner. So yeah, they're pretty open about it. They don't call anybody. They don't email anybody. They don't snail mail or fax anybody. They rely on sort of the honor system. So this is you collecting signatures. So you just need to find somebody who's willing to vouch for you. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that part. I just thought of like the person I reported to, like, oh, can you tell me like when I started this project in 2016? Like, I don't think they would want to go do that for me, but I'm thinking about colleagues that still work there. So that's super helpful.
Yeah. And remember, you don't have to be very specific. So you could say, man, when did I start this project? Was it January 26th? Was it February something?
Yeah.
Just put January 1st. or just put February 1st, right? It does not need to be, so specific. Like I worked on this project from February 16th, but we didn't start until 12:35 p.m. until September 19th. And we finished at 4:00. No, you don't need to. You could just say from January to September. That's 8 full months. And, and you just go there.
Okay, perfect. That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, that's why I'm like, let's talk about this, because I know that's one piece. So you can do that. Did you see the calculator here? Since we have a couple minutes, let me just show a couple things to you. So we'll start here. We'll show this desktop. Okay, come here. So when you log in, you should have, and I believe I did grant you access, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to log in, and I'm probably gonna need to log into this one too. Yeah, there goes your name there. Okay, so did it do the same thing for me? No, it didn't. Okay, so if I go to, yes, it did. This is the same one. So let me log out of this and just go to pmaspire.com. Yeah, this is the app. Okay, I need this one. Where is my login? No, not the app. I don't want the app.
Okay, I think I'm in here. Is it experience calculator?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm trying to, because I have like the main portal and you have the student portal. I was trying to get to it, but yes, at the bottom. So you see it, that experience one, you can use that and make it easy, right? You just put start date, end date, assume, and if you're working 40 hours or 50 hours or 60 hours, change that one and then it'll spit out the hours. Then just make an assumption. I spent about maybe 5% initiating. I spent 40% planning. We were executing 30% of the time, was monitoring, controlling 30% of the time. I don't know. That's already over 100, but you do that and then everything else should be good there.
Oh, okay. So I don't have to get into detail about it, like what I did while I was doing the execution work, like managing and directing the project work.
No, you do. You do,
okay.
but not in that section. Not in that section. Right. You just have here, I think, let me plug in an old hard drive. Yeah, it worked. There you go. Oh, I looked up and I was like, oh, she turned her camera on. Is that you? No, that's not you. All right. Let's let this hard drive pop up. Here we go. And I believe, so now I should just be able to search. And I want to show you my my application. Be easy, APC, PMI. Where's the PMP? PGMP, PMI, PMP. Okay, here's like 1, here's 2. Okay. All right, so see if I can make this a little larger. All right. So what you're going to do now is you'll put your name, the organization you're working for, whoever would be sort of the contact, the project name, the start and end date. You put the hours that you spent doing each one. So you see, I was very just, okay, looks like what I did, 32 and a half times 2 is 65. So 65, right? So it's a third. So I spent a third here, a sixth, a sixth, a sixth, and a sixth. See, I was just like, all right, I'm just going to divide it like that. And then this is the objective. We need to overhaul their PE program. So now in planning, I didn't say in planning, but I defined the scope and evaluated feasibility of the new program, participated in work breakdown structure, responsibility assignment matrix, and risk analysis, developed schedule and procurement management plan, attained approval from project plan from probation. Now executed action plan, right? actually, we know we're doing execution, so I don't need to put that much. Performed vendor management and provided status reports. That happens in monitoring and controlling. Monitor project for out of scope safety and security issues. Conducted training sessions, then formalized and obtained final acceptance from the project, participated in project evaluation. Okay. Now, by the way, the reason why I have this, I was audited. This is what your audit sheet looks like. So it comes from PMI. Okay. Here's their project management experience audit report, your paragraph that you will write. So the system that I have will help you with this. And then what I want you to do is to write a very simple 550 characters, including spaces or less, 550 characters or less, including spaces, a little paragraph like this that just says, what did you do in initiation? What did you do in planning? Right? What did you do during execution? What did you do during monitor controlling? How did you close the project? And what was the outcome? Participated in project evaluation.
Okay, that's not hard at all.
Not hard at all.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't get into too much detail, like, talking about stakeholders or anything.
This is Karin. Did you really take CJ's class? Did you learn how to use our language in your resume, so to speak? Right. So here's Adobe. We moved Adobe from Orem to Lehigh. Right. Short project. We did it in a month because it was just a move. I didn't initiate the project at all. It was already there. And all I had to do was come do a little bit of planning, a little bit of execution, a little bit of controlling, short project, because it didn't call for a whole lot of my time. I used a bunch of third-party labor. So the relocation of almost 1,400 people, it talks about what they had, the servers. We did another single phase for a PM I took over, right? Done the pre-site move walkthrough, verified the plan. All right. So that's why I have little hours there. So that the stories need to sort of match up. Right. Supplied a suitable number of skilled technicians to execute, disconnect, and reconnect. Provided end user support. Staff with technicians to offer on-site technical assistance for post moves, and conducted a project review of top 5 issues of what went well and what could have been improved. So that's a small project. Okay. Let's see. I have a very big one. Let's see. This might be a big one. Okay. Here's a bigger one. Here's the Special Olympics. Right. So in this one back in 2010. So a lot of time planning. All right. Maybe 7 weeks of planning, just to initiate the project. Right. Going back and forth, because we're now talking about Contra Costa County Office of Education, Special Olympics in Northern California, and the Project Unify. So it took a while just to initiate it. And then, almost 15, I think it was like 15 weeks of planning, lot of execution and controlling. And then closing the project was just a few weeks to go out and get stuff from vendors, right? And so then, same thing, coordinating related projects, which nowadays I would never tell anybody. This is probably why I got audited, because now this is a program, right? But when I did this, I didn't have somebody to guide me. So I just, I wrote my thing and I sent it in, and then, I just went on my own. So a lot of the stuff that I teach now is because I went through the full experience of everything and I just kind of know it. But this is likely why, now as I'm reading it now, this is the first time I don't show this to anybody. This is the first time I showed this to somebody. What I usually do is, for instance, at the end of the class, I always ask people, stay in touch. I'll give you the study guide. And then I ask people, tell me how you did on the exam and what your experiences are. And then every class, when I send out that last message, I include experiences from the last 3 people. So that way, what's happening on the exam, what the test centers are like, et cetera, et cetera. And then I usually ask somebody in the class on that day, if they would want to volunteer their paragraph for me to, go through it right then and there live. We do it as a class. Everybody sees it, kind of like what I'm doing with you. So that's how that happens. But, since it's me and you, I'm showing you mine. And I'm just now realizing that this is probably why I got audited, right? I've never even looked at this before, but because, right, multiple projects, that is a program. Right? But anyways, right, towards disabled and non-disabled students, right? And then I talked about the program charter. So, right, they probably I don't know about this, CJ, but they let me go, right? I got this sign from the person and they let me go and take the exam. So, I mean, you can see it's not that detailed.
Okay.
They don't want to know that this project was meant to, help all the kids who have autism and Down syndrome and Asperger's, and it's to help them feel better about themselves. But at the same time, it was also to take all the general ed students, and they became the fans, and they did the decorating, and they were in the stands, and they have like 3,000 students cheering on special ed students. Like, when does that happen, right? Those kids are amazing. Like, they don't care about none of that. They don't care about any of that stuff. They just care about what you do during initiation, planning, monitor, controlling, closing. All right. So don't make it too difficult. Don't spend a whole lot of time on this. Now that you've seen this, here, in fact, you can use this as an example. I will just put this in the chat. Make an easy one, like just one or two simple ones, and then from there, let me review it. We'll tweak it, and then once you get that one right, then you can use it as a sort of a template.
Cool. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it from PMI. I don't think there's anything else there was nothing else. You've obviously logged in and you're a member and all that, so you know what to do from that standpoint. The only thing I can think of, you're already a member, so you're going to get the 155 off. You already have access to the electronic version of the PMBOK. You will also get access to their salary survey. I don't know if you've heard about that, but the PMI salary survey is a very good tool to have, because it will tell you. All right, and you'll have to be logged in to get this, but since I'm logged in, it should pop up. It's a great report that you can look at to determine your credentials, and if your credentials, based on you holding the PMP, having your whatever degrees you have and years of experience, what does that look like? Where is it at? Did it download? What does that look like for you, right? So very good tool that you can come in and take a look at all the different countries, a general overview, and it's pretty good. Let's see, where's the US is page 300. So can I do that? Can I just go to page 300? Okay, and so now you can go here and you can see people with the PMP, just regular work in project management. What's the average person making in the US, across the US? We know it's higher here in the Bay Area, but across the US, if you've been a PM for 5 to 10 years, you make 60K. Okay. And then they go by, if you have a master's degree, it's 65, right? And then if you have PMP, 68, but if you've had your PMP, it goes to 85 on average, right? And so then you can start looking by gender, by all this, and then you can really get into the departments and see, am I making what I should be making? Am I, you're in sort of the IT or in the software or technology. So you want to look at some of those and you want to see, here's the average, here's sort of the height, am I in the upper? Am I in the middle? Am I in the lower half? And you can use this. And then these numbers change because these are the average. And then you go on top of it and you look at, okay, what type of projects am I working on? And how many employees and team size and all that stuff. And then you can determine where you fit. So it's a real good tool just to, if you want to negotiate salary or anything like that, it's a real good tool for you to understand. And then there's a couple other things at the end of our class that, not in the meeting, that I will, I wasn't even sharing the screen, was I?
No, but I was like,
salary survey.
I was like envisioning it.
All right. Well, since it's up, that's crazy. Okay. So boom, here it goes. I started on page 300, which is where the US is. Where do we go?
Okay. So it's a
so it goes by
document when you log in.
You got to be logged in to get it, but you can see the salary, the median salary for a person that holds a PMP is 116K. Okay. If you're in the upper 75, 140K, right? The average 118. So the average is 118, the middle is 116, the upper 75%. So if you're like, nope, I consider myself to be an upper 75%. Is my company, compensating me? And then total compensation, right? And you can take into account your, your benefits and all that. So you can start looking at this. You can start looking at by position, what they make in the past 12 months, if you hold the PMP or not, by years of work, by all of this stuff. So this is a really good tool to help you to negotiate where your salary should be. You're probably more along the lines of, let's see, event chain, extreme. You're probably more here, either an agile iterative. You also could be in process based because that's, implementation is very process based. Just depends on where you see yourself and how you use this information and interpret it to go back to your organization. You can also do it by, in here, they should have by gender too. And you can see here, this gender gap, right? And then you can go back to your organization, be like, look, y'all ain't paying me enough, damn it. All right. So, I mean, just whatever, But a big thing about this is like, this profession has been really good to me. So I don't, it's important that you get your PMP. Yeah, I know I'll teach you to get the PMP. I'm not worried about that. Then it's, how do you use this information to really be good at your job? Because I care about our industry. All right. One day I want to see a chief project officer. And then the third piece is then how do you monetize your PMP? Right. So that's the part that I'll help you with as well. Like, it's not saying that you leave your company or anything, but how do you take this thing to either make your life easier, to make a little bit more money for yourself, to have, a higher stature, whatever it may be. There is some reason that you chose to come and do this. And let's satisfy that, because it's usually just not the credential itself. So think about that. Take some time. You don't have to have by Tuesday or Thursday, but by next Sunday, think about how you really, want to be able to utilize this information, where you see your career maybe in 5 to 10 years. And let's see if I can, sort of help you, figure out a roadmap that you'll iterate a bunch of times, because whatever we do is not going to be the same, right? And then it'll also give me an idea if there's any people that I know, that I might want to connect you with, just to have, like, as a colleague and in the future. One of the persons I'm already thinking about right now is Nina Samasco. She was when I was at NTT, she was the chief product officer. Then she became the CEO. Now she's actually something else, but she's working for this huge cannabis company. But I mean, just people like her who are very, influential, powerful women that do good things. I'll tell you right now, Karin, that I had my first all-women class November of 2017. When I've been teaching this thing since 2012, and the majority of my classes were always older white men. Right? Since November 2017, I've had 5 all-female classes. We've had like 13, 14 project managers, and they're just women. So I see our profession shifting. I see the age of our profession coming down, right? The average age of a project manager right now is 53. So that's coming down. It's going to come down, come down, come down. You're not going to see people like me anymore. You can get all these young folks. So, right, and losing the hair and all that. You can get the young folks. So, that's what's happening. And I just want to make sure that everybody that I come across, I give them back the same things that, like, I've had a lot of gurus who've come, they put their hands on my shoulder, they've helped me out. So I'm just about paying it forward. So seriously, anything you need, you let me know. Okay.
Okay, awesome. I'm feeling very empowered today. Thanks, CJ.
Good. Yeah, go pick up
this
your
is
little girl
awesome.
and give her some of that power too.
Awesome.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you so much. Talk
You're
to you
welcome.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.